Simone Carter, a black emergency room nurse working the graveyard shift at County General, makes an impossible choice. When a critically injured biker arrives with catastrophic injuries from a hit and run, she spends 12 hours fighting to save his life. The same day her father's funeral is held 3 states away, she doesn't leave, she stays. By dawn, the man lives. And word spreads through the motorcycle club that one of their own survived because a stranger chose duty over grief. What Simone doesn't know is that this biker, Marcus Ghost Hayes, was heading to that funeral too. He'd made a promise to her father 20 years ago, a debt of honor that never expired. When Ghost recovers and learns what Simone sacrificed, he makes a call. Within 72 hours, 97 members of the Iron Promise MC arrive at County General with flowers, stories, and a tribute that transforms her grief into something unshakable. Proof that family isn't only blood. What follows is a story of redemption, unexpected kinship, and the quiet courage it takes to keep a promise, even when the world tries to break you. The monitor's rhythm was the only prayer Simone Carter believed in anymore. Beep, beep, beep. The trauma bay at County General was flooded with the particular chaos of a Saturday night. Fluorescent lights burning white-hot, the hiss of ventilators, the sharp copper smell of blood mixing with antiseptic. She moved through it all like she'd been choreographed into this dance 1,000 times before, because she had. 7 years in emergency medicine, 6 of them on the night shift, and Simone could read a room by its heartbeat alone. The ambulance had arrived at 11:47 p.m. with a call that made every trauma surgeon in a 5-mile radius hold their breath. Male, mid-40s, struck by a vehicle doing 45 miles per hour, multiple injuries, BP dropping, consciousness fading. Hit and run. The driver had never stopped. Marcus Ghost Hayes was wheeled into Bay 3 with his ribs crushed like paper. A femur shattered at an angle that made the orthopedic resident wince, and internal bleeding that the ultrasound confirmed was pooling fast. Simone was assigned to him the moment his arrival was called. She didn't choose it, the charge nurse had pointed, and she'd moved. That was how it worked. No time for hesitation, no time for anything except the body in front of you and the belief that if you moved fast enough, if you did everything right, you could steal someone back from the edge. His jacket lay crumpled on the counter, leather deep brown, weathered like an old hymnal. Across the back, a patch, Iron Promise MC. Beneath it, a rocker that read, President. "Type and cross," the trauma surgeon barked. "Get me 2 units of ONEG now." Simone was already moving, IV in the left arm, then the right. Arterial line, Foley catheter, each movement precise, economical. No wasted motion. Her mother used to say that Simone moved through crisis like water, present, necessary, impossible to stop. Her mother had said a lot of things before the cancer took her words away. If you're just joining us, hit that subscribe button. This story gets deeper. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Dr. Patel, the best trauma surgeon in the state, worked with the focus of someone who'd learned that hesitation costs lives. Simone was in the OR, monitoring vitals, adjusting medication, watching Ghost's body fight for permission to keep breathing. At 3:33 a.m., his heart rate spiked. Ventricular fibrillation. The room went silent except for the alarm. "Charge to 360, Patel called. The defibrillator whined. Ghost's body jolted. Nothing. Again. His heart came back like someone waking from a nightmare, gasping and terrified and alive. The surgery continued for another hour. By the time Patel closed, sweat had darkened his mask, and his hands were trembling with the particular exhaustion that comes from holding someone's life in your palms and refusing to let it slip. Simone stayed through the closure. She stayed through the transfer to ICU. She stayed as the monitors settled into their familiar rhythm, not the rhythm of crisis, but the rhythm of survival. Fragile, temporary, but survival. It was 6:17 a.m. when she finally stepped away from the bed. That's when she saw the date on the wall clock. Her phone had 17 missed calls. Her brother, her aunt, her cousin. All variations of the same message. Where are you? Her father's funeral had started at noon yesterday. By now it was over. The flowers were wilting. The church was empty. Her family had stood in the front pew without her, and the only explanation she'd given them was a text at 11 p.m. Emergency. Can't leave. I'm sorry. They didn't understand. They thought she'd chosen wrong. Simone sat in the staff break room and let the exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her hands were still covered in ghost blood. She'd washed them 3 times, but she could still smell it underneath the soap. Around her, the hospital hummed with its endless hum of suffering and survival, and she understood, with the clarity that only comes at dawn after a 12-hour fight, that she'd made the only choice she could live with. She'd kept someone alive. She'd broken faith with her father. In that moment, both things felt true. By noon, Ghost was stable. By evening, his eyes flickered open. The first thing he said, rasping through the ventilator tube, was, "Did I make it?" Simone, who'd returned for her next shift because she couldn't stay away, took his hand. A violation of professional distance, but she'd earned it. "Yeah," she whispered, "you made it." Ghost's recovery was slow, measured by the tiny victories that the critically injured understand. The day he could breathe without full ventilatory support. The day he could squeeze her hand intentionally instead of reflex. The day the infection that had started to bloom in his lungs was caught by antibiotics instead of becoming the final punctuation mark on his story. Simone was there for most of it, not because it was her shift, though it often was, but because she'd started to understand that some people don't heal alone. Ghost had no family listed, no emergency contact except the Iron Promise MC, whose president he apparently was. No one called him except a woman named Diane, who left messages at the nurse's station asking for updates. On the 5th day, when Ghost was finally extubated and could speak in actual words instead of handwritten notes, he asked for paper. Simone brought it. His handwriting was shaky but deliberate. "What's your name?" "Simone," she said. "Simone Carter." He wrote again. "I know you saved my life. The nurses told me. You were here the whole time." She didn't correct him. Didn't tell him she'd only been there for the first 12 hours, that other nurses had taken over, that she was just one person in a system designed to keep people alive. Instead, she said, "You're a fighter. Your body did most of the work." He shook his head slightly. Even that movement cost him. Then he wrote, "Why?" "Because that's the job," she said. "No," he wrote. "Why did you stay? After your shift ended?" Simone had asked herself that question 100 times. The honest answer was complicated. It involved her mother dying in a hospital where no one had fought hard enough. It involved her father's funeral and her own guilt, and the particular ache of knowing you couldn't be in 2 places at once. It involved something simpler, too. The belief that if you could save someone, you should. Because you mattered, she said finally, because someone needed to. Ghost closed his eyes. A tear moved down his cheek, whether from pain or emotion Simone couldn't tell. Maybe both. By the 8th day he could sit up. By the 12th he could stand for 5 minutes with Simone's arm supporting him. By day 18 he was moved to a regular floor. The crisis had passed. The healing, the real healing, was just beginning. It was on day 19 that the first Iron Promise MC member walked through his door. He was enormous, 6'5" at minimum, with shoulders that barely fit through the doorframe and a beard that looked like it had been grown for a specific purpose: intimidation. His jacket was identical to Ghost's, leather, weathered, patches declaring his allegiance to the club, and his rank, Sergeant at Arms. "President," the man said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Good to see you breathing." "Diesel," Ghost rasped. His voice was still rough, still healing. "How's the club?" "Waiting for you," Diesel said. He pulled a chair close to the bed. "We got word about what happened, about the nurse." Ghost's eyes found Simone, where she stood at the monitors, checking his vitals. She'd tried to give them privacy, but there wasn't much privacy in a hospital room. "This is Simone," Ghost said. "Simone, this is Diesel, Vice President of Iron Promise." Diesel turned to look at her, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. "You're the one who kept him alive." "I did my job," Simone said. "No," Diesel said. "You did more than that. Word travels fast in the club. You stayed past your shift. You fought when he flatlined. You refused to let him go." He paused. "That's not a job. That's a choice." Simone felt Ghost watching her from the bed. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Sometimes the silence is more honest than words. Diesel stayed for 2 hours. He told Ghost about the club, which brothers were healing from their own wounds, which ones had been holding down territory, which ones were asking when their president was coming home. He brought news from the outside world, the real world, the world that didn't smell like antiseptic and didn't beep constantly with the rhythms of survival. When he left, he looked at Simone directly. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." She nodded. She still didn't know what to say. That night, after her shift ended, Simone sat in her car in the hospital parking lot and finally opened her phone to the messages she'd been avoiding. Her brother, Dad, would have understood. "You did what you thought was right." Her aunt, "We're proud of you, sweetheart." Her cousin, "Come to dinner when you can. We want to hear everything." But there was no message from her father, because her father was dead, and she'd missed his funeral, and some choices once made couldn't be unmade. She put her head on the steering wheel and let herself cry. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. Simone thought it was over. That's what she told herself as she helped Ghost with physical therapy, watching him relearn how to walk, how to climb stairs, how to exist in a body that had been broken and was still learning to trust itself again. She thought the story ended at discharge, with Ghost walking out of County General in borrowed clothes because his leather jacket was still evidence in the hit-and-run investigation. She was wrong. It started small. A dozen roses delivered to the nurse's station on a Tuesday. No card. A gift card to her favorite coffee shop slipped into her locker. A handwritten note from Ghost saying simply, "Thank you for saving my life." Then, on a Thursday evening, Diesel appeared in the waiting room during her shift. "He wants to see you," Diesel said. "Ghost, when you get off work." Simone's shift ended at 7 in the morning. She should have gone home, should have slept, should have done anything except climb into the passenger seat of Diesel's motorcycle and let him drive her into the pre-dawn darkness toward a destination she didn't know. They rode for 40 minutes. The city fell away behind them, replaced by stretches of highway where the world was still mostly asleep. Diesel didn't speak. The roar of the engine made conversation impossible anyway. Simone held on, felt the cool morning air against her face, and tried to understand what was happening. When they finally stopped, it was at a sprawling compound on the edge of the county. A clubhouse, Simone understood instantly. The sign above the gate read, "Iron Promise MC, established 1987. But it was what was inside that made her breath catch. Motorcycles, dozens of them, maybe 100, all lined up in perfect formation, all facing the same direction, all gleaming in the amber light of the rising sun. And next to each one stood a man, or woman, she realized. Some of them were women, all wearing the colors of the Iron Promise, all silent, all waiting. Ghost stood at the center of them, still moving slowly, still favoring his left side, but standing. His leather jacket had been returned to him, the one with the president rocker. His arms were open. "Simone Carter," he called out, his voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. "These are my people." She didn't understand, didn't move. Ghost continued. 47 years ago, your father saved my life. He was a firefighter. There was a fire at a warehouse where I was trapped. Everyone told him to let me burn. I was just some punk kid with a motorcycle and no future. Your father went in anyway. He pulled me out. He gave me a second chance." Simone's hand went to her mouth. Her father had never told her this story. "When I got out of the hospital that day," Ghost said, "he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, 'You got a second chance. Make it count. And when you can, give someone else one too.' He made me promise. He made me swear that when life put someone in front of me who needed help, I'd help them. No questions, no hesitation." Ghost's eyes found hers across the distance. "You honored that promise," he said. "You stayed when you could have left. You fought for me when it would have been easier to let go. You gave me a second chance, just like your father gave me one 47 years ago. Last chance to hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what happens next. Comment below if you know what honor really means." Around the compound, the bikers stood motionless, watching, bearing witness. "So the Iron Promise MC is here to witness something," Ghost said. "To tell you that your father's promise didn't die with him. It lives in all of us, and it's going to live in what we do next." He raised his hand, and as if choreographed by something deeper than words, every biker raised their right fist to the sky. Simone stood alone in the center of the compound, surrounded by over 100 members of the Iron Promise MC, all with their fists raised, all holding a moment of silence for a man they'd never known, but whose legacy they all carried. She understood in that moment that her father wasn't gone. He was here, alive in the choices of people who'd kept his memory bright. He was here in Ghost's survival. He was here in the promise that had echoed across 47 years like a bell that never stopped ringing. She understood, too, that by saving Ghost's life, she'd become part of something bigger than herself, part of a family she hadn't known she was joining. When the sun fully rose, it rose on a world that looked the same, but felt completely different. Simone stood in that golden light, surrounded by the Iron Promise MC, and understood that family isn't only the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who choose you. The first woman to approach Simone was named Rio. She was 5'3", had shoulders like a linebacker, and tattoos that told stories across her arms. Dates, names, symbols that meant something to the club. She wore a vest identical to the men's, but hers had an additional patch beneath the Iron Promise logo. A woman's silhouette holding the reins of a horse. When Simone asked what it meant, Rio smiled. "It means I run my own ride," Rio said. "I don't follow, I lead." That's how Simone learned that the Iron Promise had women, not girlfriends or wives, though some of them were those things too, but women who held full membership, who rode their own bikes, who earned their patches through years of loyalty and sacrifice, women who were family. By the end of that first morning, 5 of them had surrounded Simone with coffee and breakfast and questions about her shift, her work, her life. They asked because they wanted to know, not out of obligation or curiosity, but because she'd become part of their story now, and in the Iron Promise, you didn't just exist on the periphery. You were either in or you weren't, and if you were in, they wanted to know everything. Your father, one of them, a woman named Maya with silver threading through her braids, said carefully, "How long?" 3 months. Simone said. "Cancer, pancreatic." The women exchanged looks. They understood loss. Simone could tell by the way their shoulders carried it, the particular gravity that came with having buried people you loved. "My mother too," Maya said quietly. "Breast cancer, 8 years ago. I thought it would break me." She paused. "It almost did. But then the club took me in, and I learned that sometimes the only way through grief is to let yourself be held by people who understand." Rio reached over and squeezed Simone's hand. "We know what it's like to lose a father," she said. "Some of us literally, some of us metaphorically. But we know." She leaned closer. "And we know what it means to save someone, what it costs you." Over the next few weeks, Simone found herself being woven into the fabric of the Iron Promise, in ways she didn't quite understand, but didn't resist. They started small. Rio would text her, "Coffee tomorrow?" Or Maya would call, "We're having a bonfire Friday. Come." She went. And when she went, she found herself listening to stories of women who joined the club because they needed family, because they'd lost everyone else, because the only place they felt safe was surrounded by people who understood that loyalty meant something. Women who'd fought their own battles and carried their own scars. There was Devon, a former cop who'd left the force when she realized the system was designed to protect itself instead of people. There was Keisha, a veteran who'd come home from overseas and found that civilian life didn't make sense until she found the club. There was Yolanda, a black woman like Simone, who'd worked as an ER doctor before a patient's family member had threatened her life for her race, and she'd left medicine behind to find meaning in something else. Yolanda and Simone found each other in the way that people of the same experience sometimes do, recognizing something in each other's eyes that no one else could quite see. They'd both tried to save lives within systems that were designed to break them, and they'd both found that sometimes the real saving happened outside those systems. "Why did you leave medicine?" Simone asked her one evening as they sat on the porch of the clubhouse, watching the sun set behind the tree line. "Because I was tired of pretending that the system was neutral," Yolanda said. I was tired of fighting both the disease and the racism, and I couldn't give either one what it needed to win. She smiled sadly. I thought I was giving up. Turns out I was just redirecting my energy. To what? Simone asked. To this, Yolanda said, gesturing toward the clubhouse, toward the women and men inside. Toward the entire network of care that the Iron Promise had woven across the region. To a family that doesn't discriminate. To people who show up. To loyalty that isn't theoretical. Simone thought about the last conversation she'd had with her father. He'd been tired, diminished by the cancer, but his mind was still sharp. He'd taken her hand and said, "Make sure you surround yourself with people who get it, baby girl, who understand what you're trying to do, because the world will try to make you small. Don't let it." She'd thought he meant something specific at the time. Now she understood he meant this. He meant finding your people. He meant choosing family. By the time Ghost was walking without pain, Simone had already decided to let the Iron Promise become part of her life. She wasn't sure what that meant yet, whether it was just friendship, just community, or something deeper. But she knew it meant showing up. It meant being present. It meant honoring the choice she'd made when she'd stayed past her shift to save a man she'd never met. And maybe, she thought, it meant honoring her father's choice to go into that burning building 47 years ago. Because some promises echo across time. Some acts of courage ripple forward in ways we never expect. And sometimes the family we choose becomes more real than the family we were born to. Not because blood doesn't matter, but because choice does. 3 months after Ghost was discharged from the hospital, Simone got a call from him asking her to meet him at a specific address. When she arrived, she found not a clubhouse, but a cemetery. Ghost was standing in front of a grave marker. The name read, James Jimmy Carter, 1958-2025. Firefighter, father, friend. Simone's breath stopped. I needed to come here, Ghost said quietly, to thank him, to tell him that his daughter kept his promise alive, even though she didn't know what the promise was. Simone felt her knees weaken. Ghost steadied her, held her as she stood in front of her father's grave, and understood fully what it meant that her father had gone into that burning building, what it meant that he'd pulled Ghost out, what it meant that 47 years later his legacy was still alive, still moving through the world, still changing lives. He saved me, Ghost said, and then I forgot for a long time. I got hard. I made the club mean something fierce and protective, and I forgot that the reason I became that way was because someone showed me mercy when I deserved none. He paused. Your father never let me forget, though. We stayed in touch. Holidays, birthdays, he'd call and ask how I was doing, how the club was treating me, whether I was keeping the promise. What promise? Simone whispered. To make the second chance count, Ghost said. To help people when life put them in front of me. To never turn away from someone who needed help. No matter how inconvenient it was, to say yes. He turned to face her. When I was hit by that car, I was on my way to your father's funeral. Did you know that? I was going to fly out to pay my respects, to tell the family what he'd meant to me. Simone shook her head. She hadn't known. When I woke up in the hospital and they told me you'd saved my life, I understood something. Ghost continued. Your father's last gift to me was through you. He taught you his values. He taught you what it means to save someone. He taught you that the promise matters more than convenience, more than comfort, more than even saying goodbye to a parent you love. Simone's tears came then, hot and uncontrolled. She knelt in front of her father's grave and let herself fall apart in a way she hadn't since his death. Ghost held her. This man she'd saved, this man her father had saved 47 years ago, and the circle of it, the perfect closure of it, was almost too much to bear. "He was proud of you," Ghost said. "Before he died, he told me about his daughter, the ER nurse, how you fought for every patient like they were family, how you refused to let people die if there was anything you could do to stop it. He said, 'My Simone, she's going to change the world one patient at a time.'" Simone looked up at Ghost, her vision blurred. "He said that?" "He did," Ghost said. "He knew you were going to be extraordinary. He just didn't know that being extraordinary meant honoring the same values he'd taught you. It meant being brave enough to sacrifice something precious for someone you didn't know." They stood there for a long time, Simone and Ghost, in front of James Carter's grave, and understood that some legacies don't end with death. They evolve. They pass forward. They live in the choices of the people who loved them. The ceremony happened on a Saturday evening in late November, 4 months after Ghost's accident. The entire Iron Promise MC had gathered, all 97 members, from the oldest patch holders to the newest prospects. They wore their colors, their leather dark against the November sunset. They stood in formation, as they had the morning Simone had first arrived at the compound, but this time they weren't silent. This time they were waiting for something. Ghost stood at the center, and Simone stood beside him, still not entirely sure what was happening. She'd come when he asked. That was all she knew how to do anymore, show up when people she loved needed her. "Brothers and sisters of the Iron Promise," Ghost began, his voice carrying across the compound, "we gather today to honor a man who isn't here. James Carter was a firefighter. He was a father, he was a friend, and 47 years ago he saved my life." The crowd stood motionless, listening. "He pulled me out of a burning building when he could have let me burn," Ghost continued, "and then he asked me to make a promise, that I would help people, that I would give second chances, that I would honor the gift of survival by making my life mean something." He turned to Simone. "His daughter kept that promise," Ghost said. "She kept it when she didn't even know what it was. She stayed past her shift to fight for a man she'd never met. She chose duty over grief. She chose family, even though she didn't know we'd become her family yet." Ghost raised his hand, and as he did, the 97 members of the Iron Promise MC raised their fists to the sky. The sunset turned them into silhouettes, a wall of support, a wall of witness, a wall of belonging. "Simone Carter," Ghost said, "the Iron Promise MC honors your father. We honor the values he taught you, and we honor the choice you made. Today, we would like to offer you full membership in our family, not as an outsider, not as a guest, but as a sister." Simone's hand went to her mouth. Rio stepped forward with a leather vest, black, worn, perfect. Across the back, in bold letters, was the Iron Promise logo. Beneath it, a patch unique to Simone, a stethoscope intertwined with the gears of a motorcycle engine. Beneath that, her rocker, Sister of the Code. "This isn't something we offer lightly," Rio said quietly, placing the vest on Simone's shoulders. "This means your family. This means when you call, we answer. This means your battles are our battles. This means you belong to something bigger than yourself." Simone put her arms through the leather. It fit like it had been made for her, which she realized it had been. They'd planned this. They'd made this vest. They'd known somehow that this was where her story and theirs intersected. If this story moved you, drop a like right now, and I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever made a sacrifice that changed everything? The bikers erupted, not in screaming, but in the rumble of their voices, in the roar of motorcycle engines firing up in perfect synchronization, in the sound of a family welcoming someone new. Simone stood in the center of the Iron Promise MC, wearing her vest, and understood that her father was there. Not in spirit, though maybe that too, but in the values she'd inherited, in the choices she'd made, in the legacy that had rippled forward from one burning building 47 years ago to this moment, right now, with the motorcycle family raising their fists to the sky. The next morning, Simone woke up in her apartment and put on her ER scrubs like she'd done 1,000 times before. But something was different now. She wore the Iron Promise colors underneath, the vest hanging in her closet, ready for when she left work, ready for when she stepped into her role as something other than just a nurse. The hospital was the same, fluorescent lights, the steady beep of monitors, the particular exhaustion that came from trying to save people in a system designed to fail them. But Simone moved through it differently now, because she knew, in a way she hadn't before, that she wasn't alone. A patient came in, a motorcycle accident victim, ironically, a young man, probably 23, who'd been hit by a car while riding his bike. He was terrified, alone, his family still an hour away. Simone stayed with him. She held his hand through the imaging. She talked to him about the club he rode with, small motorcycle club, nothing like the Iron Promise, but family nonetheless. She told him that people cared about him, that he was going to survive this, that second chances existed if you were brave enough to take them. When his family arrived, his mother grabbed Simone's hand and thanked her for being there, for fighting for her son, for not giving up. Simone thought about Ghost, thought about her father, thought about the way that one choice could ripple forward and change everything. That evening, when she left the hospital, Rio was waiting for her in the parking lot on her motorcycle, a Harley, chrome, gleaming in the afternoon sun. When Simone approached, Rio handed her a helmet. "Come with me," Rio said. "There's something you need to see." Simone put on the helmet and climbed onto the back of Rio's bike. They rode through the city, through neighborhoods she recognized and neighborhoods she didn't, until they arrived at a community center in one of the poorer parts of town. Inside, the Iron Promise MC had set up a clinic, free medical care, provided by Yolanda and 2 other doctors who volunteered their time, free legal services, free counseling, all of it offered by the club to the community, no questions asked, no payment required. "This is what we do," Rio said. "We help, we show up, we don't abandon people." She pointed to a sign above the clinic door, the James Carter Memorial Free Clinic. Honoring a firefighter who believed in second chances. Simone's breath caught. "After Ghost told us about your father," Rio explained, "we knew what we had to do. We opened this 3 weeks ago. Yolanda runs it. 3 other doctors volunteer. We're adding more services every month." She paused. "It's named after him because he embodied what we're trying to be. He saved lives. He believed people deserved second chances. He understood that being part of a community meant showing up for people you don't know." Simone walked into the clinic and saw Yolanda, dressed in scrubs, treating a woman for a diabetic wound. There was a line of people waiting, all of them there because the Iron Promise MC had decided that loyalty meant something bigger than just protecting their own. It meant protecting everyone. 6 months after Simone had saved Ghost's life, she found herself standing in front of a class of nursing students at County General's teaching hospital. She'd been asked to speak about resilience in emergency medicine, about the choices that define us, about what it means to save a life. She told them about Ghost, about the night she'd fought for 12 hours to keep him breathing, about the choice to stay past her shift, to break faith with her grieving family, to do what she believed was right. She told them about her father, about a firefighter who'd believed that second chances mattered, that mercy was a form of courage, that the choices we make ripple forward in ways we can never predict. She told them about the Iron Promise MC, about a motorcycle club that had taken her father's values and turned them into action, into a free clinic, into a support system for vulnerable people, into a family that welcomed someone they didn't know and made her feel like she belonged. The nursing profession teaches us that our job is to save lives, Simone said to the classroom of students. But what I've learned is that saving lives is only the beginning. The real work is understanding that we're all connected, that when we save someone, we're not just saving an individual, we're saving their impact on the world. We're saving the ripples they'll create. We're saving the legacy they'll pass forward. One of the students raised her hand. "Did you ever regret missing your father's funeral?" she asked quietly. Simone paused. She thought about the cemetery, about standing in front of her father's grave with Ghost, about understanding that her father's funeral hadn't ended with his death. It had transformed into something living and breathing and ongoing. "No," she said finally, "I didn't regret it, because I learned that honoring someone's memory isn't about being present at their funeral. It's about living according to the values they taught you. My father believed in showing up for people, so I showed up for Ghost. And by doing that, I honored him in a way that was bigger and more meaningful than anything I could have done at a graveside." 1 year after Ghost's accident, the Iron Promise MC held a massive rally. Over 500 motorcycles from clubs across 6 states had been invited. They came to witness something unprecedented: the dedication of the James Carter Memorial Hospital wing, funded entirely by donations from motorcycle clubs who'd heard about what the Iron Promise MC was doing. Simone stood beside Ghost, both wearing their Iron Promise colors, as city officials spoke about community healthcare and the importance of charitable organizations. But what mattered more to Simone was that the ward would now have 40 more beds, 10 more trauma bays, and resources that would save lives, her father's legacy embodied. After the ceremony, Simone walked through the new wing with Ghost and Rio and Yolanda. They saw the names on the doors of the new rooms, all of them donors or volunteers or members of motorcycle clubs who decided that loyalty meant something more than self-preservation. In the last room, they found a bronze plaque in memory of James "Jimmy" Carter, firefighter and friend. He believed that second chances matter, that mercy is courage, that showing up for people, even when it costs you, is the highest form of loyalty. Through this wing, his legacy lives on, saving lives, day after day, year after year. In his honor, we promise, we will show up, we will fight. We will never abandon anyone who needs us. The Iron Promise MC. Simone stood in front of that plaque and felt her father's presence, not as a ghost, but as a living force, breathing through every choice the Iron Promise MC made, every patient they helped, every life they saved. "Your father changed the world," Rio said quietly, putting her arm around Simone. He probably never knew it, but he did. Simone smiled through her tears. He changed Ghost's life, she said. Ghost kept that promise and changed mine. I kept it, and now we're all part of something that's changing other people's lives. She paused. That's how it works, isn't it? One act of mercy leads to another. One choice to show up leads to another person making the same choice. That's exactly how it works, Ghost said. He looked at Simone, this woman who'd saved his life, this daughter of the man who'd saved his life 47 years ago, this nurse who understood that loyalty meant something concrete and real and lived out in choices every single day. Your father called it the ripple. He said that every time you save someone, you're creating ripples that will touch people you'll never know. Simone looked around the new wing, at the rooms that would hold people on their worst days, at the equipment that would fight for their lives, at the infrastructure of hope that the Iron Promise MC had built in honor of a firefighter who'd taught them what it meant to belong to something bigger than yourself. The ripples, she whispered. That night, Simone rode her own motorcycle, a Harley she'd bought 3 months ago with Rio as her mentor, through the city streets toward the clubhouse. The iron of the bike hummed beneath her, the engine roaring with the voice of something alive and powerful and true. She thought about the night she'd saved Ghost's life. She thought about the choice to stay past her shift. She thought about her father, standing in a burning building, making the decision to save someone who everyone else had given up on. She thought about legacy, about the way that one person's values could echo forward across decades, across generations, across the lives of people who'd never even known them. And she understood finally what her father had been trying to teach her all along. Family isn't only the people you're born to. It's the people who understand that saving lives, actual lives, real lives, requires sacrifice, requires showing up, requires the courage to choose right, even when it costs you everything. As she pulled into the Iron Promise MC compound, she saw the entire club waiting for her. 97 members strong, wearing their colors, standing in formation. When she parked her bike and walked toward them, they raised their fists to the sky. A black woman who'd been born into one family and had chosen to be part of another. A nurse who'd learned that her real calling wasn't just saving individual lives in the emergency room. It was building community, honoring legacy, and making sure that the promises people made carried weight and meaning. She raised her fist to the sky, and in that moment she felt her father there, felt Ghost beside her, felt the entire Iron Promise MC surrounding her with the particular warmth of chosen family. The ripples continued, outward, forward, touching lives she would never know, creating change she might never see, but knowing, absolutely, completely, that it was happening. That's what it meant to honor a promise. That's what it meant to belong. Thank you for riding with me through Simone's story. If this resonated with you, if you believe that loyalty means something, that family is chosen, that one act of courage can change everything, please subscribe to the channel and never miss another story. Drop a comment telling me about someone who showed up for you when you needed them most. And until next time, remember, ripples matter. Your choices matter. You matter.